The reading that's assigned from the Old Testament this morning is from the book of Job. And I knew about 2 weeks ago, because I kind of look a little bit ahead in the lectionary to see what's coming down the pike. And I know that for the next 4 weeks, our lectionary assigns a passage from the book of Job. And I don't know how much any of you know about the book of Job. I don't know very much about the book of Job, a little bit, not very much. I know more now than I did 2 weeks ago. But, earlier this summer, we were assigned no less than 6 weeks in one chapter of the Gospel of John, the 6th chapter, which is John's Eucharistic liturgy, stemming its origin, coming to us from the Passover meal, to the contemporary, this is my body, this is my blood. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed 6 weeks of just going very deeply into a small passage of Scripture. And so I made the decision a while back when I found out about this that I was going to spend the next 4 weeks talking about the book of Job. And all of you have heard the expression, I'm sure, the patience of Job. And nothing could be further from the truth. Job had no patience. You'll discover that. And also you'll hear from people saying that Job answers the question, why do innocent people suffer? Job does not answer that. Job is a lot of different things, but one thing that the book of Job does not offer are easy answers to unanswerable questions. I'm remembering when I was first ordained, I was serving a church in Florida, and I hadn't been there very long, probably not a year, and I got a call from a fellow his name was Nils Benson, N-I-L-S, Benson. And I knew that he was very active in the parish. I didn't know much about him. I didn't know what his story was or anything like that. And Nils was a big guy, 6'4", couple hundred pounds, 240 maybe. And he came in and he said, how much do you know about Alcoholics Anonymous? And I said, I know that there is one. I don't know very much about it. And he said, well, how about the 12 steps? Do you know about the 12 steps or anything like that? I said, I know there are 12. I don't know what they are, but I know that there are 12. And he said, are you aware that at any given time, probably 10 to 15, maybe even 20% of your congregation, no matter where you are going to be addicted to something? I mean, everyone is addicted in some way to something, but you'll have a number of people who are a slave to their addictions. And he said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to 12-step you. I'm going to make sure that you know what the 12 steps are. We're going to have breakfast once a month for a year, and I'm going to teach you what the steps are, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what it means to be an addict, an alcoholic. And Nils was a street cop from Brooklyn, New York, tough guy, athlete in college, and he was on the beat. He was walking around in New York City, tough neighborhoods. And he got shot right in the spine. And as a result of that injury, of course, he became addicted very early on to painkillers and alcohol. And this is a guy that was, a straighter than straight arrow. And he knew he was in very deep trouble when he lost his marriage, lost his family, his children. And of course, he was on disability because he couldn't walk, couldn't do his job as a police officer. And he said, I just clearly had a choice. I was going to do this stuff until it killed me, or I was going to find a way out. And I said, I found AA. And so, one of the great blessings of my life is that he just took me under his wing. And he was very candid about all of the steps, and he worked through them very carefully with me. And it was a great introduction to me, and the way that I look at the 12 steps is that if you took this book, the Bible, and you put it into a pot on your stove and set it under a high heat, that what would be left after everything boiled off would be the 12 steps. Because we are addicted. We're addicted because we have two natures. We have a physical nature, which gets us into trouble, and we have a spiritual nature, which, if we surrender to it, will save us. It's that simple. And so the very first step is just to wave the flag and say, I can't do it. I can't do it. I haven't the strength. This is beating me. And slowly but surely you come through a process of making decisions and develop a lifestyle with which you can live alongside the addiction that we all have, because we're enslaved in these corporal prisons. And one of the things that came out of that teaching for me, and many addicts ask this question, how come it is that somebody can go to a gambling casino with a certain amount of money and they'll say, I'm going to lose just this amount of money and then I'm going to go home. And they go in and, after they've mortgaged the house and the car, everything they have, all their family possessions, they realize that they can't stop. They can't stop. And they say, how come? How come somebody can go to the casino with a certain amount of money, lose it and go home, and I can't stop? Why is that? Why is it that some people can sit down to a lovely meal and have a glass of wine and enjoy it and the company of other people, and other people, when they start with a glass of wine, they wind up in Brazil married to 7 people? And Nil said, this is a very legitimate question. But the response to it is that why is not a spiritual question. It's not. It just is. It is what it is. And one of the big questions that comes in life, and I must admit, my dear friend Emery Dameron, whose funeral was yesterday, here's Emery, 73 years old, just a little bit older than me, year and a couple days. And, he goes camping in Yosemite, and he dies in his sleeping bag at a campsite. And, Martha, his wife. Why? Why? And, I'll admit honestly that the suffering in my life has been manageable. Not an idyllic childhood, but certainly I was well provided for. Went to great schools, private schools, many of them, was well educated. If there was anything I really wanted, I was never denied it. My parents loved me. I've never really had anything, I've done things to myself, but real tragedy has not come my way personally. The worst thing that has ever happened to me happened to my wife. We all went through that trauma a year ago. But it's not that I've escaped altogether suffering. It's not that I've escaped altogether suffering. I remember, again, very early on, I hadn't even been ordained a year, but we had a home in Florida where I was, was my first pastorate. And right next to us, a lovely couple, about the same age as Sandy and I. And they had a daughter that was the same age as Biz. They were, I think when we went there, Biz was only about a year and a half or 2. And they had a little daughter, and they got along, and you never really knew which house they were going to be in because, if they were away, we'd watch their daughter. If we were away, they'd watch Biz. And it was just a great thing. And the mom got pregnant a second time. Oh, we were so excited. Here we are, we're going to have another baby. Everybody was so excited. Had the baby, another little girl, and like that. And, Grandma is home watching the baby, a couple of months old, And I come home one afternoon, and there's cars everywhere, what's going on? Well, under the grandmother's watch, had put the child to, down in the crib and was just, reading a book or watching television or whatever, goes back in to check on the child, and it's dead. And while the family were devout Roman Catholics, because I knew them and they knew me and they were very comfortable with my presence, they said, would you offer the homily at the funeral? What do you say? I mean, that's suffering. That's unimaginable. Why? Just went to sleep in the middle of the day. Grandmother was right there. And so, terrible things happen to just wonderful people. I mean, we just recently came through the 20th year, you call it an anniversary. How do you call something like that an anniversary of 9/11? And those poor people, all those innocent souls, thousands in those towers. What? Why? And now you're going to talk to me about a loving and sovereign God? A God that can do anything that God wants and doesn't stop something like that? And so you can see. And, when you get down to things like the Holocaust, I mean, I'm done. No more of this God. We're through here. And you can see. And, that's a really legitimate option. I'm walking away from faith. I've had it. And now, this isn't a problem that only you have. This is a human thing. This works, it doesn't matter who, where, when. And I think one of the first things that I want to say about the book of Job, and one of the reasons that it's really, really attractive to me, is that it's the oldest book in the Bible. It comes kind of later on, like, Genesis to here is up to the book of Job. So you could look at the Bible and say, well, it must have been down the road a little bit. But they're estimating the book of Job to be written sometime, catch this, between 2500 BC and 1800 BC. My friends, that is not yesterday. That is not yesterday. They calculate, really, according to the Hebrew. Now, one of the telltale signs so that we can determine the age is the nature of the language, because this has nothing to do with even ancient Hebrew. This is older. This is almost a forgotten dialect. A slant. There are at least 100 words in the book of Job that are only in the book of Job. Nowhere else in the entire canon of Scripture, Old and New Testament, do you find these particular words, because they're so old. So right away that should tell you something about the book. It's old. This problem is not new. If you're suffering, you're not the first. If you've asked big, serious questions about God and life and why and who's running the show, how am I supposed to be in life? You're not alone. You're not alone. And those questions aren't going to be answered. I'm sorry. I wish that I could say, here it is, got a bow on it. It's going to be easy from now on. No. And the book of Job, I think, really honestly approaches all of those very serious questions. So it's old. And the language is old. And one of the great things, and most of the people who write commentaries on the book of Job, and there are a number of them, one of the interesting things about the commentaries is that the first one really wasn't written until almost 600 years after Christ. No, none of the church fathers really wanted to take it on. Whoop, not going to go there. I think I'll write on Genesis, that'd be easier, or Exodus. Job is too much. And so you started getting really, serious commentary by Gregory the Great, who was, the great. I mean, he was Pope Gregory, and that's in the 6th century. Augustine followed that, and, some of the earlier commentaries. But, Thomas Aquinas, the great Dominican scholar, probably the greatest theologian that ever lived, took on the book of Job and said, it's the most exquisite book in the entire Bible. And those who read it and digest it and live alongside of it and try to understand it all say the same thing. This is sublime. It is sublime. But she does not give up her treasures easily. And you can't just pop in and out of the book of Job. Life is harder than that. Intellectually, you need to be more rigorous. And not only that, but you need to surrender. You need to surrender. So the book of Job paints a very interesting picture. And I'm just going to paint the beginning of it this morning. I'm going to read a couple of chapters. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to read the book of Job. It's 42 chapters. It's long. It's hard. A lot of it's really complex poetry. I mean, you might have struggled with Shakespeare when you were in middle school. But that's child's play. This is really serious life work. So you've got some homework. And we're going to be in this 4 weeks. And if you don't come back next week, I don't blame you. This is hard work and no fun. But worth it. You ever do anything in your life that was great, that didn't require something of you? Have you ever done something really hard and been blessed by it? Anyway, all that by way of saying, I've already said it. So, here's the first chapter. I'm going to read the first 2 chapters of the book of Job. And I call this Into the Darkness. Into the Darkness. And this will get us fired up. The book of Job. Oh, by the way, most of the commentary that I've turned to on this have been rabbinic scholars. These are Jewish scholars. And I found out that what we call Job, they call Eov. Yov. Y-E-O-V, as in voice. Yov. I'll use Job. There was once in the land of Uz a man whose name was Job. That man was blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from all evil. There were born to Job 7 sons and 3 daughters. He had 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 donkeys, very many servants, so that this man was the greatest of all people of the East. His sons used to go and hold feasts in one another's houses in turn, and they would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and to drink with them. And when the feast days had run their course, Job would send and sanctify them, and he would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, "It may be that my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." So this is what Job always did. Now, I just want to stop there. That's 5 verses in, and I want to just make note of something that's important. This helps with the timing of the book. And we know now that this book predates Exodus. In other words, this is before Moses. This is before Sinai. This is before the law was given and the Aaronic and Levitical priesthoods were established, because Job is acting as the household clergy. He's the priest. He's offering the sacrifices for his family. After the exile, after the time in Egypt, this would not have been the case. I continue. The scene shifts now. We got Job, blameless, upright, no evil, clean slate, even offering sacrifices for his children, who seem, by the way, to be partying pretty hard. We continue now, and the scene shifts to the transcendent. One day the heavenly beings came to present themselves before the Lord, and the Satan also came among them. The Lord said to the Satan, "Where have you come from?" Satan answered the Lord, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down on it." The Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil." And then the Satan answered the Lord, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not put a fence around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But stretch out your hand now and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face." The Lord said to Satan, "Very well. All that he has is in your power. Only do not stretch out your hand against him." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. So we have a little interesting scenario happening in the transcendent environment. Conversation between the Lord and the Satan. And I just want to be clear when I use the word the Satan. In Hebrew it's ha-satan. And, it's referred to 3 times primarily in the Old Testament. And it means the adversary. It's a force. And it means that which goes against. It's the adversary. You might think of the ha-satan as the prosecuting attorney. By the way, the dialogue is very legalistic. It's almost, the setting is almost like a courtroom drama. Job, of course, is the defendant, and you have this prosecuting attorney, and you notice that the Satan, this adversary, and the Satan is the Satan. Whenever you say let's do this, the Satan says let's not. And that just happens in life. So, I like to think of the Satan as not being so much a person as a personality. We continue. Now, one day, when Job's sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in the elder brother's house, a messenger came to Job and said, "The oxen were plowing, and the donkeys were feeding beside them. And the Sabaeans fell on them and carried them off and killed the servants with the edge of the sword. I alone have escaped to tell you." And while he was still speaking, another came and said, "The fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and all the servants and consumed them. I alone am escaped to tell you." And while he was still speaking, another came and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 columns, made a raid on the camels and carried them off and killed the servants with the edge of the sword. I alone have escaped to tell you. And while he was still speaking, another came and said, your sons and your daughters were eating and drinking wine in their elder brother's house. And suddenly a great wind came across the desert, struck the 4 corners of the house, and it fell on the young people. And they're all dead. I alone have escaped to tell you. And then Job arose, tore his robe, shaved his head, fell on the ground and worshipped. He said, naked I came from my mother's womb, naked I shall return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this, Job did not sin or charge God with any wrongdoing. Okay, that's enough for today. I won't launch into the 2nd chapter. But you can see the initial scenario. You know, it's a frame within a frame. The frame is the heavenly conversation. God, the Satan, cutting a deal. Job's going to be caught in the middle. And Job never did anything wrong, did everything right, was blessed by it abundantly, and so forth. And the story is going to now unfold as to how Job and his friends continue, given the fact that Job has now lost everything. Everything. All the camels, all the oxen, all the children, all the possessions. He's gone into the darkness. A bad thing has happened to a good person. I wonder where it's going to go from there.
Contributions to St. Luke's Episcopal Church help to make the digital ministry and other outreach within the community possible. If it is in your heart to make a donation, St. Luke's secure PayPal link, as well as the church's mailing information, may be found in the description of this video. Thank you.